Welcome to This Week in Racing, where we're going to be discussing some open wheel sponsorship news as well as the continuing trouble in NASCAR paradise. NASCAR has fired back at Kyle Busch for his comments yesterday, and it's pretty much full-blown civil war. I might be exaggerating just a slight bit, but let's get into the news. So the Sauber F1 team is no more. It will now be referred to officially as Alfa Romeo Racing. The change was announced today on the team's Facebook page, and going forward, we now have an Alfa Romeo official factory team in Formula One, despite the fact that they use Ferrari power units. Of course, this is just a step up of a commitment from the Fiat group in Formula One, having two teams. It's almost like they're kind of following in the footsteps of the Red Bull program and trying to move drivers through not one, but two teams in Formula One. And the event formerly known as the Toyota Grand Prix of Long Beach will be getting a new title sponsor come Tuesday. It's expected to be announced that Honda will take over the sponsorship rights for the Long Beach Grand Prix. Now, there's some conflicting reports out there whether or not Honda itself will be the title sponsor or their luxury subsidiary Acura would be the title sponsor. I would lean more towards Acura, seeing as not only will IndyCar and Honda have a presence there, but also IMSA with their sports car program with the Penske Acura ARX 05s. It's kind of interesting as well that Toyota gets taken over at an event sponsorship by Honda themselves, and it's even kind of more funny that I jokingly predicted this when the Toyota announcement was made. It seems sometimes jokes become too real. And speaking of IndyCar-related sponsorships, this is a pretty big one, a pretty major one, in fact. The Indy 500 picks up a new presenting sponsor. It was in the past Pengrade Motor Oil, and it is now going to be Gainbridge. It's part of the 1001 Group, life insurance and financial company that sponsors Zach Veach in IndyCar and continues to step up its investment into IndyCar racing. It will be more than the $1.5 million per year that Pengrade was offering, and will also be willing to buy ads on NBC Sports. So a pretty major deal is kind of been strung together here by the Holman & Company for the Indianapolis 500, and it kind of flew under the radar. And it's weird because some people have made the comparison of Gainbridge to a Northern Lights or some of the other kind of strange .com boom sponsors that showed up around the 2000s. And I have to say that it does give me a little bit of those vibes, to say the least, to hear kind of like, well, there's this, I mean, and it's literally a brand new company. Like, Gainbridge was officially created a couple of days before the announcement was made that they are sponsoring now the Indianapolis 500. It's a little bit strange. It's a 4-year deal. There's a lot of money being exchanged here. So if this is, the guy who runs this, I can't remember his name specifically. I should have looked it up before I started recording. But apparently he went to church with Zach Veach, and that's where the Zach Veach sponsorship came from, and it's kind of blossomed from there. They also sponsor the women's golf tournament that is held at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. So the guy behind this company is putting a massive amount of money into the Holman & Company and their subsidiaries. I guess life insurance costs a whole lot of money, or at least it's a very profitable business venture, because there's a lot of money being thrown around here. But if this is a guy who's trying to get a business off of the ground, I guess to make money, sometimes you've got to spend a lot in advertising dollars. And I guess it's better to see this kind of money being moved around in IndyCar racing rather than God only knows where else. They will also become the primary sponsor, or at least Gainbridge branding will be kind of the primary branding on Zach Veach's car as well. So you're going to be seeing a lot of Gainbridge coming in this season of IndyCar racing. Not necessarily out of left field, but not unsurprising either. NASCAR has fired back, specifically at Kyle Busch, though he was not named. NASCAR Vice President John Probst had this to say about Kyle Busch's comments yesterday about the brand new aero package. For the drivers who don't like it, they are very good at what they do and get paid a really good chunk of money to do the things that take a lot of talent. They want to spout off about this racing, not needing a whole lot of talent, then eventually that will hit them in the pocketbook too. They should be careful. So, a bit of a veiled threat here from the NASCAR vice president, aimed at not only Kyle Busch, but there have been a few other detracting drivers like Brad Keselowski and Kyle Larson, to name a few. And a lot of people speculated immediately that this was a threat of actions detrimental to stock car racing, which is a penalty that's been on the NASCAR books for about 10, 15 years, where if NASCAR doesn't like what a driver says, they reserve the right to fine them and possibly even suspend them. But that's a pretty extreme case, and I think it's only been used in a couple of instances, and those instances actually involve domestic abuse or like true crimes rather than just speaking out against an aero package. Now, NASCAR came out with some damage control, a lot of damage control actually today, about all of this, because there is quite a fan divide, as kind of to be expected. But they actually came out and said, no, clarifying the comments, it's not necessarily going to be an actions detrimental to stock car racing style of thing, but the quote, and I can see the context of this pretty easily, was that if you are a highly paid driver like Kyle Busch and you say this doesn't take any talent to do and do well, then theoretically there are other drivers who might be able to step up, take your place, and do it more cheaply. There's also the kind of broad strokes actions detrimental to stock car racing thing, where Kyle Busch spouting his mouth off about that maybe affects the way some people think. And by the way, him saying that, in the video I made yesterday about it, I agreed with Kyle Busch. I said it's probably going to make things worse. So if there's a lot of fans kind of changing their opinions because of what Kyle Busch says, if there's less people watching, there's less incentive for a sponsor to pay him more and all that good nonsense. And that's kind of the crux of this issue right now. And that's kind of where I think a lot of people are kind of worried. Specifically, NASCAR is a little, I think a lot of people have come out and said this already, myself included, is that this does feel like a fairly desperate move by them. It's kind of the last of the gimmick, so to speak. I think I've said that before in the past. If they can't get something like this to work, where, you have this very tightly bunched racing where you would hope that there are a lot of lead changes and a lot of passing for key and important positions. And I think that's part of the rub right now, is that even the fans who were for this are starting to say, well, what's going on here? Because sure, the cars are closer, but we're not getting any, real shakeup. And so you've got the kind of the passionate hardcore fans who want it to be 2001 again, who are unhappy because it's nothing like it was in 2001. And then you've got the people who are on the other side who were for this, saying, yeah, let's do something really crazy to shake up the racing. And the racing isn't as shaken up as maybe some of those people would like. So that's a real catch-22 there, because you've pleased nobody with this at this particular moment. So you've got the fans out there, you've got some of the media, kind of on different sides of the issue. I've looked all over Twitter, and you've got like the guys like Jim Utter on one side, and you've got the Matt Weavers and the Jeff Glucks on the other, and they're clashing, and that's, fascinating. In a lot of ways, like I said in the intro, it's civil war. Civil war has broken out in NASCAR. And now you've got NASCAR, the organization, coming in and hitting back on drivers making comments. And in a lot of ways, when you say actions detrimental to stock car racing, and again, NASCAR themselves haven't really brought this up themselves yet. It's kind of the fans remembering how things went. But in a lot of ways, when a fight is punished, a lot of times the guy who throws the second punch is the guy who gets punished. And in this case, in that context, NASCAR was the organization that threw a punch at Kyle Busch. So it's crazy because in a lot of ways, if NASCAR hadn't commented on this right away, it might not have gotten the traction, or at least kept going the way it has, it may have stayed kind of self-contained with stupid YouTubers like me kind of taking, the quote from Kyle Busch and saying, oh, look, it's going to be terrible. But now you have NASCAR acknowledging it and kind of smacking them back, and not really and even that quote doesn't really come out and say that Kyle Busch is wrong. They're more saying, Kyle Busch, you should shut your mouth because you're getting paid an awful lot of money to drive a very easy to drive car. And that's pretty damning, to say the least. So, what do you think of all this news? Thank you guys for tuning in. That, as kind of expected, a video kind of talking about Kyle Busch kind of blew up yesterday. I'm expecting that this one will probably have a similar reaction. So get those comments going. Let's get a discussion going about all this stuff. We can talk Indy 500 sponsorships too. I'm sure some people will want to talk about that. So thank you guys so much for watching. This has been David Land on YouTube. Subscribe for more motorsport content, and we'll see you in the next video.